It is June 27th, 2016. My name is Blair Williams, and I'm here today with Marie Farley?
Farley.
Farley, I'm sorry.
That's it. Clear.
So to start off, what you grew up in New Cumberland?
Actually, I grew up in Middletown, but I've lived in New Cumberland since the late 80s.
Okay. How did your family come to be in Middletown?
Job prospects for my father.
And what did he do?
He worked in the coal mines in Schuylkill County. When the coal mines went out of business, my mom said, either you find a job down up here or we're moving down there. So we ended up in Middletown.
And what did he end up doing after that?
Owned a succession of garages and that kind of thing.
And your mother?
Was a legal secretary for 30-some years.
Where at?
At a firm in Harrisburg called, the initial firm was called Schaefer, Purcell, and Clauser. The firm now is known as Caldwell and Kearns.
Okay. So you kind of ended up in a somewhat similar field.
Oh, yes, I'm a court reporter because of my mother.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What was the inspiration then?
She did not like the fact that I worked for my dad at the gas station and that I had enrolled in college.
Okay.
And then when it came time to go, I did not want to go. And she was, well, you're not staying at home and working in a garage. So next thing I know, I was enrolled in Central Penn and attending there.
So while you were at Central Penn, was that basically to become a court reporter?
No, when I first started, they only had a legal secretary course with a machine shorthand option.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that looks like more fun than writing scribbles on a page. I'll try that. And then after 1 year, they started the court reporting course and explained it to us. And I thought, that sounds better than to be a secretary. I'll try that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I ended up there.
What would be the main differences between the two professions then?
Just the scope of the work. You
Okay.
know, as a legal secretary, you only work in a law office. As a court reporter, I started out working for attorneys doing depositions and preliminary hearings at the bottom stage and working my way up to the Court of Common Pleas.
Could you explain sort of that process of taking a deposition, or am I?
Well, a deposition in a legal proceeding, you take a deposition of someone who's either involved in as a party or as a witness or has something to offer that you think will further your side of the case. And it's just a formal sworn question and answer session.
So that was your first?
That was my first job for 10 years. And then I ended up in Cumberland County working for Judge Hoffer. At that time, the freelance firm I worked for, if Cumberland County needed a visiting judge and a visiting court reporter, they put the visiting court reporter with the sitting judge. And then I ended up doing a trial for Judge Hoffer, and then a few months later was called to see if I wanted to interview for an open position.
And what happened at the interview? Or?
Well, the interview was very unique. I had never had a real job interview.
Okay.
And he brings me into the office and sits me down and says, so you want to be my court reporter? I said, I don't know. Well, are you any good? I said, yes. And he just asked me some questions about that you're not allowed to ask now and probably weren't allowed to ask back then. Like, are you married? Are you planning to have kids? Do you smoke? What else did he ask me? Do you know anything about basketball? Because at the time it was the it was the 80s when Carlisle had the consecutive championship teams. So after he determined I knew a little bit about basketball, then he read to me out of the Carlisle newspaper, the sports section, and he asked me a couple questions about that. And then at the end he said, so you want to be my court reporter? I said, I don't know. He said, well, I'll give it a try. And he goes, okay. He said, but I got to tell you one thing. If it doesn't work, I said, what is that? And he said, it's not like a marriage. If it doesn't work out, I have to tell you. And I said, well, that's okay as long as I can tell you the same thing. He was like, yeah, I guess. So, and he said, go out and talk to my secretary. And we set it up, and 20-some years later, I was still working for him.
There you go.
Yeah. It was a good start for me in Cumberland County.
Now, Could you go into a little bit more details about what it was like working with Judge Hoffer?
Yes, unique, unpredictable. No 2 days were ever the same.
All right.
Sometimes when people would ask a question and someone would start to answer and I knew the answer was something that he was not going to like because it started with a bunch of, you know what I mean? Yeah, whatever. Those were not answers that provided him any information that he needed. So he would be, no, I don't know what you mean. No, I don't know. Stop saying whatever. Don't start a question with okay. That one of my first things I remember is we had a summary appeal hearing with a law clerk, and he was representing the Commonwealth. And at the end of the hearing, the judge said, go give that kid this paper. And on the paper was this thing said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's little cross things. And I gave it to the guy, and he said, what is that? I said, I don't know. You'll have to ask the judge. The judge said, that's how many times you started a question with the word okay. And the kid said to me, so he wasn't paying any attention after I said okay? I said, well, no, he must have because he found your guy guilty. But they were the kind of things he did or said.
Now, when you were working for Judge Hoffer, did you do any other work with other judges, or?
Occasionally, but not very often.
You were mainly just assigned to?
Yes, yeah.
So were you able to kind of see the differences between Judge Hoffer and other?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. He was very short and brief and to the point.
Yeah.
And there were some other ones that, if you ask how this glass case was made or something like that, they could give you a 10-page answer. When if you ask that question in Judge Hoffer, it'd be like, well, it was made in the store.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Hmm.
But, some days it was very hard to keep a straight face when he would ask questions. Like, there was one time where some kid stole a polyester tie, and he rolled it up in his pocket and stuck it in his pocket, and he was asking the guy, well, why did you steal that tie? And he said, well, it went with my work uniform. And Judge Hoffer said, well, didn't it get wrinkled when you put it in your pocket? And the guy said, no, it was polyester. And the judge said, you stole a polyester tie? Don't they cost like $2? That kind of thing. Or another time when a defendant tried to tell him that he didn't know his co-defendant was going to rob someplace. And the guy had a Halloween mask on, or had a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the middle of August. And Judge Hoffer said, well, what do you mean you didn't know he was going to rob the place? Did you think you were going trick-or-treating? And, those kind of things. He put you in a position where you had to admit the stupidity of your act.
You've given us a few examples, but I'm wondering, was there any case in particular that really stood out for you that was quite memorable, or?
There were two. The one was that Mark Spots, who was he's still on death row. He had murdered 4 people in 4 days. And we had traveled out of town to pick a jury up to Williamsport. And the jury came down. They were sequestered for, I think, almost 2 weeks. And every night we would have sessions. We would go from the morning to like 5, and then he'd take a break for an hour and a half for dinner, and then we'd go again till like 8 or 9 o'clock because the jury couldn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember it was around Easter or something, and he had arranged for the jury's families to come down and take a bus trip to Gettysburg, I believe it was, to get an idea of what local historic things there were around here. And then the other one was the murder of a young hack student by the guy that she was seeing at the time and his on-again, off-again girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And they had murdered her and rolled her body up in a blanket and put her in a trunk of a car and then abandoned the car in some junkyard down in either West Virginia or Virginia, I can't remember. And it was pretty gruesome, and the photos were gruesome, and that was very emotional because I remember at that trial was over, he said to me, he goes, I don't know about you, kid, he goes, but that's the last murder trial I intend to do. And actually, part of that case is still going on appeal.
Now, is it difficult as a court reporter to kind of remain sort of emotionless, or you said you had a difficult time sometimes not laughing or keeping a straight face, but
In certain circumstances, yes. You know, I mean, when you've got a jury in front of you and you're talking about something really serious, you can't show any facial expressions because, for obvious reasons. But if you don't have a jury in front of you and, you know, somebody will say something dumb or, you know, you can smirk, but nobody's seeing you because the judge is behind you, the lawyers are looking down, writing their notes, and I can just entertain myself. Like, and sometimes I'll say, can you repeat that just to make sure I heard it correctly because it's such an off-the-wall answer to a question. It's like, what did that guy say? You know.
Now, when you started either like as a freelancer, then when you really started working solely for Judge Hoffer, how many judges were there in Cumberland County?
There were only 3, I believe. Judge Shealy, Judge Hoffer, and was it Judge Bailey? I believe Judge Bailey. And then by the time Judge Hoffer retired, it was 4. Judge Hess, Judge Hoffer, Judge Bailey, and Judge Hess, I think.
Guido.
Oh, yeah, Judge Guido. So maybe yeah.
And how many are there now?
There are 6. Do I have to name them?
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah, I was just kind of wondering if it's grown or decreased over time.
No, it has grown. The number of programs have grown. Like everything else, the amount of crime has gone up. The difference is in the way of the punishment. I mean, civil cases have kind of sort of stayed the same, except that Cumberland County is notorious for not giving plaintiffs any kind of a large verdict. My thought was always that people thought the money was coming out of their pocket, so, you know. But as far as criminal, like maybe when I first started, there'd be a few thousand cases in a year. Now there's more like 6,000, 7,000, and they're divided into there's different programs. Now, when I first started, if you were charged with a driving under the influence, you pled to a driving under the influence and you were sentenced accordingly. Now, if you're charged with a driving under the influence, there's different rates, and they each come with separate punishments. There are different programs to avoid prison. There's drug treatment courts for people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol, and their crimes are fueled by that addiction. The probation office, they have ankle monitors now. They have in-home detention or whatever you call it, in-home arrest. They just have, you can have programs where you can just go to work and come home from work, and that's it.
Yeah.
And all the probation officers now are specialized. It used to be if you were a probation officer and I was your probationee or whatever the word is, I only reported to one person. Now, as you go through the different programs and the different stages, you have different probation officers who are in charge of that. And I think the other thing is a lot of these programs are now funded by grants, where, nobody knew what a grant was back in the 90s. So.
Now, does each judge handle a special type of case, or?
There are certain judges that handle certain kinds, like Judge Ebert that I work for now. He handles all the accelerated rehabilitative disposition cases, either DUI or non-DUI. Judge Maslin handles the treatment court. Judge Guido and Judge Peck Judge Guido and Judge Peck do dependent juveniles.
Okay.
Judge Placey and Judge Maslin handled delinquent juveniles, where before that was just one judge. During my time working with Judge Hoffer, we did dependent juveniles and delinquent juveniles. A lot of times after our court was finished for the day. It would, our hearings wouldn't start till 5 or 6 at night.
Yeah. Now, what type of cases did Judge Hoffer mainly, or did he enjoy doing, or?
He enjoyed the delinquent juvenile cases.
Children.
Yeah, anything to do with children. I mean, dependent juveniles also. But my experience with delinquent juveniles was that before he would decide what he would do, he would say, parents of so-and-so, stand up in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And they would stand up. What punishment did you give young whatever his name was? Well, if the answer was, we didn't do anything, we were waiting to see what you would do, it was my experience that he kind of gave them a little bit more of a lecture or a little bit harder, not harder sentence, but longer or more details or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if a parent stood up and said, as soon as this happened, we took his driving privileges away, we took his car away, he's only allowed to go to work and back after school, then he would say, okay, and then fine, be in probation a couple months or whatever. But if the parents handled it, then I think he felt that that was the parent's job, and his job was to handle the penalty for the criminal part, but if you didn't discipline your kids for doing something bad, then he was going to handle that also.
Mm. Now, did he have a scholarship, or?
Not at the time he did it. No, that came many years after he passed.
Okay.
And after a lot of work on Mrs. Hoffer's part and the juvenile probation part and more people than I could figure out how to handle it.
And what is the scholarship involve?
I believe it's called a George Hoffer Second Chance Scholarship. It's for juveniles that have committed an offense and have decided that's not the life they want to live. They want to go to college, become productive citizens. They apply for it. They stay out of trouble. I'm not sure of the process that they go through to get approved for it, but I know it's not like, hey, let me have another chance.
Yeah.
There's steps to go through and protocols to follow and keep yourself out of trouble and in college.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that the number of cases have increased quite a bit.
Yes.
How many cases do you find yourself involved in on a yearly basis?
On a yearly basis, I couldn't even begin to guess. But one of the things is, a lot of times, more so on the civil side, with whether it involves support or custody or something like that, people just keep cycling through. You come and you present and fight one issue, you get a decision, you like it, you don't like it, you move on, and then 2 years later there's a change in circumstances and you want to relitigate a certain point or something new has come up. So there have been people that I have dealt with from the time their kids were maybe 4 or 5 until they were 16, 17. Just because the people didn't care for each other and just, one of those situations where adults don't always behave like adults.
Yeah. You mentioned, I'm wondering, is that one of the reasons why you think the caseloads have increased so much? That relitigation, or?
On the civil side, perhaps. I think on the criminal side, it's just that nobody thinks through the consequences of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I've written down, well, I didn't know that would happen, or I didn't mean that to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen. And it's like, well, what did you think would happen when you threw a rock through a window, and hit somebody in the head? Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
All right. So we've already discussed a few of the cases that Judge Hoffer had, but I was wondering if we could go into a few here.
Sure.
So the first one I have is the Spots trial.
Yes. That was, like I said, that was the one I talked about before. It was long. It interesting to the point of how they put all that together, because they had very little physical evidence
Okay.
at first. And they had, if I remember right, he was found in a hotel room somewhere out here. And one police or more than one police jurisdiction had gone through and couldn't find anything. And then just one particular policeman went back and took another look and found some evidence that was pretty crucial. And, you know, that's the first time I was told that my job would become obsolete in the future.
Really?
Yeah, and that was in the late 90s, I think that case was. And, but Mark Spots, he represented himself. He was a very disturbed young man. He was just kind of creepy. I mean, in the death penalty portion of the case, his attorney that represented him in the death penalty portion presented a number of his drawings, which were all very dark and, you know, like kids draw all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But back then it was unusual. So, I don't know what else you want me to tell you.
No, that's
Okay.
And the Camp Hill rides.
Camp Hill rides. They were long and drawn out. I remember that at the time, when they had the pretrial hearings, we would have to go to the prison to do those. And most of the other court reporters were pregnant at the time, and I lived close to the prison in
Okay.
Cumberland. So I was the one that covered a lot of those hearings. And each of the judges handled it differently. And Judge Hoffer's take on it was he didn't want anybody there to know he was the judge. He never brought his robe. He brought his tablets and his packs of cigarettes. And he would sit there, and it was more not an informal discussion kind of atmosphere, because it was being taken down stenographically.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't the formality of the courtroom where he had his robe on.
Yeah.
We had a tip staff that announced him and stuff like that. And I remember one day we were down there. It was in August, I believe. And the building that the hearings were in were outside the walls of, not outside the walls of the prison, but outside of the main prison itself. And all of a sudden, you heard all this noise outside. And these state cops came in, and they're like ushering us out of the room upstairs. And here what had happened was they brought the prison, they do like 12 hearings a day.
Mm-hmm.
They bring them all down in this bus, and then they shut the windows and shut the doors, and then turn the bus off, and then, well, they didn't have air conditioning then. And in the middle of August, wondered why these people got all hot and bothered sitting in this bus, and
Yeah.
one day they kicked the windows out of the bus. And that triggered, I don't know how many state police were there. But I remember Judge Hoffer and I being on the second floor, looking out the window trying to see what was going on, and him saying, Marie, how many cops do you see down there? What are they doing? You know, and me just saying, I don't know, the building looks surrounded. All right. And then he'd light another cigarette. But, yeah, the Camp Hill, and then when we came to the trials, the very first day of trials, somebody called in a bomb threat.
Mm.
And they evacuated the courthouse. We were all standing on the sidewalk for a while. And then when we came back in, he came up to me and he said, can you fit underneath your desk? I'm like, what? He said, can you fit underneath your desk? Well, I said, well, I guess if I had to, but why would I want to? And he said, because if anything happens, kid, you're on your own. I said, well, if anything happens and you think I'm going to hide under my desk, you're wrong. I'm coming around and following you out the door. And he just started laughing and said, I'm going to lock that door. So.
But that's something that I imagine's changed quite a bit since you started, is the security involved at the courthouse.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be, anyone could just walk in or out. Now you have to go through metal detectors. The county, in the last couple of years, instituted a security badge kind of ID thing, and we have our own entrance now, but you have to present it to go through, and you know, it's nice. It's not for the public, it's not for the attorneys, but it's only for employees, and it makes it a lot, I guess, easier. But because if you go in the front gate, you have to, your stuff is x-rayed and everything like that.
When did you notice that starting to change?
I would say shortly after those riots.
Really?
Yeah. But only recently have they made the employee entrance. It used to be they had the two entrances, and anyone could get in anyone. And actually, there used to be a third entrance before they had security on the side of the courthouse, on the High Street side. But once they put in the security measures, they locked that door to the public, and, well, to anyone. You can't get in there now if you wanted to. But
going back to some of the cases that you were involved with, I guess there are, we've already mentioned some of the more humorous cases, but I have here that there was a fight over a bird.
yeah, that was a divorce case. And, people didn't have children, and they treated their bird like their child, and they both fought over it, and they both wanted it, and I can't even remember what kind of bird it was anymore, some kind of parrot or something, I think. And, he would just chuckle, and right. And he'd call me in his office, and he'd just say something and just start chuckling. And people fought over. I've had people fight over teacups.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's my teacup. Now my grandmother gave it to me. No, your grandmother gave that to me as a present, and it's mine. Well, But the bird was pretty funny. There were a lot of funny things that I probably shouldn't repeat.
Well, I imagine that, that's a kind of an odd custody case, but I imagine that was kind of the custody cases, especially with Judge Hoffer's interest in juvenile.
Oh, yes.
That must have been something that he took a special interest in as well.
Oh, he did. He took a lot of interest in a lot of things. And that was the thing. I don't think people gave him credit for his compassion and his intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember a dependent juvenile one time with right before, like a few days before Christmas, where the family just dropped the girl off at Children and Youth and said, we can't handle this, or there's a reason. I can't remember what it was, but I remember Judge Hoffer went out and gave the Children and Youth caseworker a couple $100 to go buy this little girl Christmas presents, so that she would at least have presents on Christmas Day. And but nobody knew that. It wasn't like something he told anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I just happened to find it out from the caseworker. He never mentioned it to me or anyone that I know of. But he was. Like I said, I don't think anyone gave him enough credit. I always would tell people that. So. And the other funny thing was how he smoked. I know Ann thought he smoked too much, but the longer I worked for him, the more I watched him. He would light the cigarettes, and he'd wave them around when he was talking to people, but he hardly ever took a puff off of it. And then the funny thing was watching people that didn't know he smoked, and we had this one procedure where it was called the civil trial list, where if both sides had a disagreement, they would come to see him. And the people that didn't know he smoked, they were always wanting to be the first ones in there. Well, the ones that didn't smoke or didn't like smoking, by the time it was over, they were like backed up against his door, like holding their breath, waiting to get out of there. But, and the other thing about him and smoking was when they made the courthouse non-smoking, no one had the nerve to tell him he couldn't smoke in his own office anymore. So he never, as long as he worked there, he never ever stopped smoking in his office. But.
So you mentioned earlier you now work for Judge Ebert.
Yes.
What are the differences between the two judges, Ebert and Hoffer? Aside from
I'm trying to think. Judge Ebert was assistant district attorney in this county for a while, and he was the district attorney assigned to Judge Hoffer's courtroom. So they had like a kind of a good working relationship. And when Judge Ebert left and went to the state for a while, and Judge Guido took Judge Ebert's place in what we call miscellaneous court. Mm-hmm. And that is just, I guess somebody call it like petty criminal stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Judge Guido would always say to me, I don't know how to prepare for this. He said, I can have 10 cases on the list and George can make it last from 9 to noon. He said, or we can have 30 cases on the list and George can make it last from 9 to noon. I don't know how to prepare for this. Or he would always say, district attorneys had a habit of saying, this is not my case, but. And Judge Hoffer would tell them, when you are in my courtroom, it is your case.
Mm-hmm.
You should know your facts. And after a while, they all did. And that was the thing with Judge Ebert. He always knew his facts when he was in the courtroom. And that has translated into being a judge. He's always well prepared, as was Judge Hoffer well prepared.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have to interview to be Judge Ebert's court reporter, or were you assigned?
No. Well, I tell people that Judge Ebert inherited me whether he wanted me or not.
All right.
So, yeah. But I've worked with Judge Ebert for, like I said, since he started back, I think he started in 1984, which was the year I started at the county.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow, when you say it like that.
So we've talked a little bit about how the courthouse changed with security measures, but I'm sure it's changed in other ways too.
Oh, the offices have grown. Because of the amount of work, the number of employees in the offices have grown. When I first started, there were 3 judges, 3 court reporters.
Mm-hmm.
There are now 6 judges and 9 court reporters. There is also a position called divorce master, who handles nothing but the divorces now. He has a stenographer. There's also a position called support master, which handles the support aspect from the point of view of setting up the initial amount of the order.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you go to a conference, a domestic relations conference officer, and he sets a support order amount. If you don't like that amount, you appeal to the support master. Then they have a little hearing on the record with a court reporter. And then when the people don't pay the set amount after so many months, then it is transferred up to the Court of Common Pleas level for a contempt hearing. But Cumberland County, I understand, domestic relations-wise, is one of the top in the state in terms of having collections on time and not being behind and stuff.
Is there something about Cumberland County that is different from how other counties?
I think it's just the people that work there.
Okay.
I think it's just the people that are a little more dedicated and, you know, pay more attention, and like everything's computerized. So I'm sure they get some kind of alerts about this guy hasn't paid in 2 months, this person hasn't paid in 3 months, this person's never paid, and then that triggers some kind of process with them to file paperwork to have it brought to the courthouse level.
What about the number of lawyers and the?
Well, there are a lot of lawyers. I think the profession of lawyering, if that's really a word, has changed, because when I first started, there were certain lawyers that did criminal stuff, like private lawyers. Certain private lawyers only did criminal stuff, only did auto accidents, only did adoptions, only did negligence cases, only did malpractice. And I think now there's such competition that you have a lot of lawyers that will do everything. You know, somebody that I saw that only ever did like trial litigation will maybe represent someone in a DUI or represent someone in an adoption or something like that. There are a ton of lawyers, but I think the competition is just so much more fierce for clientele.
What about the DA's office?
That has grown a lot also. I mean, it used to be like maybe the elected DA and maybe 2 or 3 others, but now the DA's office has elected DA, 2 chief deputies, and probably 3 or 4 senior assistant district attorneys and 2 or 3 assistant district attorneys.
Wow.
And their office, I think, is kind of understaffed for the amount of work they have to do, because the other thing was it used to be trial terms were maybe 8 weeks apart or more, and from in between one trial term to the next, you could get caught up with what you needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore. I mean, trial terms now are like every 6 weeks, and you can have anywhere from close to 400 to close to 700 cases on a trial list, where when I first started, if you had 300 cases on a list, it was a lot, but you were still busy because you only had 3 judges then.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned earlier during the Spots trial that someone told you that your
job would be obsolete.
Yeah. Why did they make that comment?
Because of the computer age. Because of I remember the guy. One of the things I had to do during that trial was babysit the alternate jurors when the jury was out deliberating, and the one guy was or said he was very knowledgeable in computers, and he looked at me and said, "You know, in 5 years your job will be obsolete." And I used to always tell people, "Well, that may be, but I work for Cumberland County, and they're not on the cutting edge of technology, so I'm not too worried." But I've understand they can have perfected voice recognition a bit, in that you can have different tracks for different people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they've perfected how to mesh that all together so that you get it one at a time and make a coherent transcript out of it. And I know that other counties that have tried it, it didn't work so well, and some have gone back to having court reporters.
Well, I'm sure, or maybe I shouldn't be. How has technology changed?
For me, the only way technology has changed for me is that when I first started, I wrote on a machine and it came out on a little strip of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Now I still write on the same machine, different machine, but the keys are still in the same order, and it's computerized. Now when I write, it writes onto one of those little SD cards,
Mm-hmm.
and then I take it back to my computer and put it in my computer. And as I explained, if the word's already in my dictionary and I hit the right keys, when I translate it, it should come up with the correct word. But you can't put like proper names or that kind of. They tell you not to put proper names in your dictionary because it clogs it up. But I don't listen to whoever they are. I work with a lot of the same attorneys. They, for criminal and civil or defense and prosecution. So it makes sense to me to have their names in there if they're going to be in there all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's mainly what I have for the courthouse.
Okay.
Can shift a little bit to we've already talked a little bit about
Let me tell you one more thing about computerized.
I'm sorry.
No, I just thought of it. An example of the voice recognition techniques was the trial of the person that killed the New Cumberland cop, Willis Cole.
Okay.
His co-defendant, they had to go to different counties to select juries. His co-defendant jury was selected out of Chester County. And Judge Hess was the presiding judge. He went down and listened to some of their recordings and the transcripts, and he didn't like it. So he said, "All right, one of you guys have to go along." And I volunteered to do it, and I went, and I remember the thing about Chester County that I remember was how violent it was. You know, I mean, up here when they say, one of the questions in jury selection is, have you or any member of your family been a victim of a crime, similar crime? And these people were raising their hand like, my mom got killed at an ATM, or my dad got pulled out of a car and shot. And I'm thinking, nothing like that happens in Cumberland County.
Yeah.
But that was what I wanted to say about that.
Well, I should have asked too. Is there anything else about sort of the courthouse and that I should have asked but didn't?
No, not that I can think of now, but I'm really good at thinking of things after you later.
All right. Well, I'll come back to that at the end then. So you grew up in Middleton and then New Cumberland?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah.
So what was a typical day like for you growing up?
Oh. For me, get up and go, if it wasn't a school day, go do what I wanted to do. And
what did that usually involve?
Riding my bike around town and hanging out with friends. And there was a little soda shop that you could go and make your own cherry Cokes and vanilla Cokes and that kind of stuff. Sit on a bar stool and read comic books and not have to buy them. Put them back when you're finished.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Now, could you describe your family growing up a little bit?
I have a brother and a sister, and my parents. My dad worked very long hours. Like I said, he owned a gas station. He worked from 6 in the morning till 9 at night, 5 days a week, and 6 to 6 on Saturdays. He died very young of a heart attack. My mom was the legal secretary from the time I was in 3rd grade until I was 20-some years old. Well, yeah, 27. And she died when I was 30. She was the reason I went to court reporting school, like I said before. My brother is a college educated. He was the director of support services at the Mechanicsburg Navy base. He's retired, enjoying retirement immensely. My sister still lives in Middletown. Didn't get too far away from where we grew up. She's a grandmother. She works, you know.
All right. Now, how is... So you moved to New Cumberland, you said, in 1980?
Well, it was like the late 80s. I started in Cumberland County in 1984.
Okay.
And when I started, I lived in Harrisburg. But shortly after I started there, they were thinking about having a head court reporting position. And I had worked there long enough to realize that if I wanted to be the head court reporter, I had to live in Cumberland County.
Yeah.
So I moved to New Cumberland. The process went through. There were only like 5 of us, I think, then. 5 or 6 of us then. And I had almost the most seniority. One girl beat me by maybe 8 months because of pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
And we both wanted to do it together. And the president judge at the time said, no, only one of you can do it. And we both decided neither one of us wanted to be the only one to do it. So we just said thanks, but no thanks. And we just have always managed to work together, all the court reporters, and keep everything straight, and with no one being the boss of all of us. We're all kind of equal.
Okay. How has New Cumberland changed since you first moved?
I think like a lot of small towns, a lot of empty storefronts. You know, when I first moved to New Cumberland, I thought it was great. It had everything I needed. It had grocery stores, it had a movie theater, it had nice restaurants, it had a state store, it had beer distributors. They still have all those things, except the movie theater is probably going to go out of business. Mm. The number of restaurants has declined, and the number of good restaurants are almost non-existent. There are a lot of empty storefronts down on the main street. Mm-hmm. You know, they have a lot of those little pop-up car dealerships, I call them. You know.
So I'm guessing now, do you spend a lot of time in New Cumberland, or do you spend most of your time in Carlisle, or?
I spend a lot of time in New Cumberland.
Okay.
You know, on the weekends, there's not a whole lot to do. You know, you go out to dinner with friends, or come down to Carlisle to some of the activities down here. Mm-hmm. You know, if there's a concert at the old theater or something that you want to hear, or something like that.
Well, is there anything in particular that you value about Carlisle or sort of the surrounding area?
The farmers market on the square.
All right.
That's pretty nice. Well, it's convenient, you know, catty corner, and I can get what I want. And yeah, the car shows. Although I've never gone to a car show, I think I'm surprised if I go someplace and somebody says, "Where are you from?" and if I just say Carlisle, they're like, "Oh, that's where the car shows are." Yeah. Well, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Connecticut.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, you know, that kind of stuff.
You've never gone.
So. No, I have never gone. You know, a car to me is something I get in and drive someplace. I don't care as long as it runs well and looks nice and gets me where I want to go.
All right. How has Carlisle changed since you first started working here?
I think busier, in the sense of there's more of a college presence now. I know the law schools went out and then it's back, but I mean in terms of the like Dickinson, the War College. I didn't understand much about the War College at all until I had a friend who had a friend that got stationed here, and then I learned a little bit about that. I think busier in terms of there is more to do. You know, they have these brew pubs popping up and nice restaurants now. I don't know what to say other than that.
No, that's... Now, is there anything that you enjoy doing now?
Oh, going to the beach, but they don't have a beach in Carlisle.
That's fine. That's fine. And where do you go to the beach?
Rehoboth and Lewis, that area.
Okay.
And it's not where when I was younger, we vacationed in the New Jersey shore.
Okay.
But New Jersey is the shore, and Delaware and Maryland are the beach. And that's what I've learned about going down there all those years. If you say the shore, people assume you're going to New Jersey. Which doesn't make any sense to me, but...
And what is it about the beach that draws you there?
I don't know. The sun, the relaxed atmosphere. Mostly the relaxed atmosphere. Nobody's in a hurry. Where I'm at, they call it lower, slower Delaware.
Okay.
And that relates to all kinds of things. Like you can call somebody to come fix something, and he'll get there when he gets there, and he'll fix it when he gets around to it, and he'll come and look at it and say, yeah, okay, well, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
I'll get back in touch, and 2 months later, you're still waiting for him to get in touch, and it's like, hey, where are you? Oh, you're on my list. We'll get to you.
So it's a little bit different than the atmosphere at the courthouse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no urgency down there.
All right. Well, did you remember anything that I should have asked you about the...
No, that'll be after we leave here, I'll remember.
Oh, okay. What about just in general? Anything you want to mention on the record while you're here?
I think that the courthouse is well run. There's always issues. You can't please all the people all the time. But when it comes to the what I call the fourth floor, the judicial section, I enjoy working there. I've always enjoyed my job. I've always enjoyed the people I work with. I will be forever grateful for the start Judge Hoffer gave me, the opportunities he gave me, the things he taught me, the things I learned without him teaching me. The way I used to... There were some attorneys that I would like more than others.
Yeah.
And when they'd come in, it'd be like, all right, now, if you want to get along with the judge, don't say this and don't do that. And
so
don't ever tell him something that isn't true. Because, a lot of times people think they know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And I do remember a time when someone did give him at a sidebar, oh yeah, this is the case you need to rely on. And he did, and then it turned out to not be what the attorney said it was. And so that didn't work out so well for that attorney. But yeah, I don't know what to say. I enjoy my job. It's why I'm still working. I could have retired a while ago. I enjoy Judge Ebert. His approach and his outlook is very different than Judge Hoffer's, but they were both very intelligent. I feel very fortunate. What I tell people is I was fortunate enough to work for 2 judges and to have 2 secretaries that treated me as well as the judges did. So.
Well, actually, we'll might end on this. What is the relationship between everyone in that office and between you, the judge, and the secretary?
Well, in our office, it's the judge and secretary. Judge Ebert just recently has a new secretary, so we're still working all of that out. But she's very competent, very intelligent. He likes her. I like her. The tip staffs are all, the tip staffs are the courtroom personnel that set up the water and the pitchers and
Okay.
make the copies and basically do what the judges and the secretary tell them. Me, if I can get away with it. But they all work closely together. Judge Ebert is, as was Judge Hoffer, you know, hey, let's go have a drink, or let's go here, or Judge Hoffer and his wife for Christmas, they used to have parties at the courthouse for Christmas, different offices. But Judge Hoffer didn't want to do that. He invited all the secretaries and all the court reporters out to the 2 Mile House. And we had a nice little luncheon out there. And we always all appreciated that. And, you know, that's a common camaraderie that there is up there.
All right.
All right. Am I sweating?
Well, yeah, it's probably a little bit different
Well,
than you're
yeah.
used to.
Oh, yeah, I'm used to writing down the answers to the questions, not giving them.
Well, thank you for giving us some answers today. It was
Well,
fantastic.
If there's anything else you need, I'm only a phone call away.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right.